Mom, get back to the kitchen right now. You're embarrassing me in front of the guests. My son's voice cut through the air like a sharp knife, and I felt each word stab deep into my chest. 72 years of life, and there I was, standing in the middle of that luxurious dining room in the Upper East Side of New York, being humiliated by the man I had carried in my womb for 9 months. Before I continue, tell me in the comments which city you're reading this story from. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss stories like this one. The guests looked at me as if I were a stain on a white wall. Melissa, his wife, sighed with that air of superiority she always had. The partners of his design firm, the firm he thought was his, averted their eyes, embarrassed. And me? I was there in my simple black dress, the same one I wore to my husband's funeral 12 years ago, trying to help serve dinner because the housekeeper hadn't shown up. Richard's son, I began to say, but he interrupted me. It doesn't matter, Mom. You always do this. You always want to meddle, always want attention. Can't you understand that there are important people here tonight? Important people, as if I were nobody. As if I hadn't spent sleepless nights studying the real estate market, analyzing investments, transforming the small tailoring shop I inherited from my late husband into a silent empire. But he didn't know that. Nobody knew. My hands were shaking as I put the serving dish back on the table. I looked around once more. The room was impeccable. Crystal chandeliers, imported furniture, expensive paintings on the walls. All paid for with money that secretly flowed from my companies to his accounts through a complex network of holdings I created so he could live the dream of being a successful entrepreneur. I'm sorry, son, I murmured, feeling the weight of all those stares on me. I'll get my things. I walked to the kitchen where I had left my purse. Through the half-open door, I heard Melissa whisper, "Honey, your mother is impossible. Every time we have an important dinner, she wants to intrude. I've told you to find a good retirement home for her." Retirement home? The woman who lives in a duplex penthouse in Tribeca, bought with money from my work, suggesting that they send me to a nursing home. The irony was so bitter I almost laughed. I grabbed my purse, that Louis Vuitton bag Richard gave me for my birthday last year, purchased with the corporate card of the company that secretly belongs to me, and returned to the dining room. Everyone was still looking at me. "Excuse me," I said, holding my head high. "Good night, everyone." Richard didn't even stand up. He just waved his hand as if dismissing a servant. "Bye, Mom. We'll talk later." I walked to the door, each step weighing a ton. Before leaving, I looked at my granddaughter Madison, 16 years old, sitting at the corner of the table. She was the only one who seemed uncomfortable with the situation. Our eyes met for a second, and I saw something in hers that I hadn't seen in anyone else's for a long time: compassion. Outside, the cold July air in New York enveloped me like an icy embrace. I stood on the sidewalk for a few moments, looking at that house in Westchester. The house I had bought 8 years ago through one of my offshore companies, registered in the name of a holding company that Richard didn't even know existed. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? As if all your sacrifice, all your love, simply didn't exist? I got into my Corolla, no luxury cars to avoid drawing attention, and drove in silence through the deserted streets. At each traffic light, a memory assaulted me. Richard at 5, crying because he was afraid of the dark. At 15, celebrating when I stayed up all night helping him with his school project. At 25, hugging me tightly when his father died and promising he would take care of me forever. Forever lasted until he married Melissa and entered New York's high society. I arrived at my apartment in Queens, modest on the outside, but comfortable inside, and the first thing I did was turn on the light in my office. The walls were covered with shelves of folders, documents, contracts. There was the true story of the Wilson family, the story that nobody knew. I took the black folder I kept in the locked drawer. Inside were the original documents, deeds, articles of incorporation, powers of attorney. The house in Westchester, registered in the name of Spring Holdings, Inc., of which I am the sole shareholder. The design firm, Wilson Design LLC, a wholly owned subsidiary of MW Investments, my main company. The summer house in the Hamptons, the beach apartment in Cape Cod, the 3 imported cars in the garage. Everything, absolutely everything, was in my name. I sat in the armchair and looked at the portrait on the wall, me and John, my late husband, on our wedding day. "The time has come, my love," I whispered to the photo. "I can't bear living this lie anymore." I picked up the phone and dialed the number I knew by heart. "Hello, Mr. Mitchell. This is Margaret Wilson. I'm sorry to call so late. Yes, I know what time it is. It's about what we discussed. I want to execute the plan. Everything, tomorrow." On the other end of the line, my trusted lawyer of the past 15 years sighed. "Mrs. Wilson, are you sure? Once we start, there's no going back." I looked once more at the photo on the wall. John smiled at me as if approving my decision. "Absolutely sure, counselor. Tomorrow morning I want all the locks changed, all accounts frozen, all access blocked. It's time for my son to discover who really supports that luxurious lifestyle of his." I hung up the phone and went to the window. Down below, New York pulsed with its lights, its cars, its nightlife. Somewhere in that city, my son was finishing his important dinner, toasting to success, without imagining that in a few hours his world would collapse. And what would you do if you discovered that everything you thought was yours belonged to someone else? If you discovered that the person you humiliated was, in fact, your greatest benefactor? The clock struck midnight when I finally lay down. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the last 12 years, how it all began. John's death was a watershed moment. Richard had just graduated in architecture, full of dreams but without a penny to his name. His father's company was bankrupt. The tailoring shop barely paid the bills. That's when I discovered that John had left a small life, insurance policy, and some investments that no one knew about. I could have used that money to live comfortably for the rest of my life. But I looked at my son, saw the gleam in his eyes when he talked about the projects he wanted to accomplish, and made a decision. I was going to multiply that money. I was going to build an empire, but I was going to do it in the shadows, letting Richard believe he was achieving everything on his own. There were nights and nights of studying. Economics books, online investment courses, real estate market analyses. During the day, I managed the tailoring shop. At night, I bought and sold stocks, invested in funds, purchased properties at auctions, all through companies with generic names, holdings, offshore entities, a legal maze that not even the best accountant could unravel without my authorization. And it worked. In 5 years, I turned $100,000 into $10 million. In 10 years, the $10 million became an empire. 12 commercial properties, stakes in 3 successful startups, a diversified investment portfolio. All of this generating a monthly income of almost $300,000. But how to get this money to Richard without him suspecting? I created Wilson Design LLC as a subsidiary of one of my holdings. I made it appear that Richard had secured an anonymous investor interested in his talent. I rented offices, hired employees, got the first clients through my business contacts, always acting in the shadows, always letting Richard take the credit. The phone rang at 6 in the morning. It was Mr. Mitchell. "Mrs. Wilson, everything's ready. The teams are already on their way. At 8 o'clock, all the locks will be changed. The banks were notified during the night. The corporate cards have been blocked. Access to the company systems has also been revoked. And how long until they find out? I asked, feeling a mix of anxiety and relief. If they went out to some social engagement after dinner, as you mentioned, they'll probably only find out when they try to enter the house. Should be around 2, 3 in the morning. It was 4. In the morning when my cell phone rang. Richard's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. It rang again and again. On the 4th time, I answered. Mom, what the hell is going on? The house key doesn't work. I called the building manager and he said they changed everything this morning by the owner's order. What owner? The house is mine. No, son. The house was never yours. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could almost see his face, standing in front of that door that would no longer open for him. What are you talking about, Mom? Have you been drinking? Are you having a stroke? I bought that house 8 years ago. You signed a comodatum agreement, Richard. A loan for use. The house belongs to Spring Holdings, Inc., a company of which I am the sole owner. Just as Wilson Design is a subsidiary of MW Investments, my company. Mom, stop this. This is no time for jokes. We're out on the street. Madison is cold. Madison, my granddaughter. My heart tightened. You can come here. I have spare rooms. To that little dump apartment in Queens? Are you crazy? Mom, unlock that door now. The key is with Mr. Mitchell. You can pick it up from him tomorrow. I mean today, during business hours. But first, we need to talk about some things. I hung up the phone and went to make coffee. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Madison was there, alone, shivering in her party dress. Grandma, what's happening? Dad is furious. Mom is in tears. They're downstairs, in the car, arguing. Come in, sweetheart. I'll make you some hot chocolate. While I heated the milk, Madison sat at the kitchen counter, watching me with those big brown eyes, so much like her grandfather's. Grandma, why does Dad treat you like that? Why is he ashamed of you? The question caught me off guard. How do you explain to a teenager that her own father had lost his way on the path to success? Your father isn't ashamed of me, Madison. He's ashamed of what I represent, the humble origin, the simple past. In his mind, that doesn't match the image he's built. But you're not simple, Grandma. I see how you observe everything, how you analyze people. You speak 3 languages, you know about art, economics. Why do you pretend you don't know anything? I smiled as I poured the chocolate into her cup. Madison was always too perceptive, for her age. Sometimes, my love, we make sacrifices for our children that they can't even imagine. Your father needed to believe he was achieving everything on his own. It was important for his self-esteem. And your self-esteem, Grandma? Doesn't that matter? Before I could answer, Madison's phone rang. It was Richard. Madison, come down now. We're going to a hotel. Dad, I'm going to stay with Grandma tonight. We need to talk tomorrow, all of us. You're not staying there. Come down right now. Madison hung up the phone and looked at me. Grandma, tell me the truth, the whole truth. And that's what I did. I spent the next 2 hours telling her everything about how I transformed her grandfather's small insurance policy into an empire, about the nights studying investments, about the companies I created, about how I directed contracts to her father's company, about the properties I bought, about the complex network of holdings that kept everything running. Madison listened to everything in silence, the chocolate growing cold in her cup. Why did you never tell Dad? Because I knew your father. If he knew his success depended on me, he would feel diminished. I preferred to let him shine. But he humiliates you. And that was the last straw, my love. Not the dinner itself, but what he said. That I embarrassed him, that I wasn't important. After everything I did? The phone rang again. This time it was Melissa. Mrs. Wilson, I don't know what game you're playing, but you'll regret it. We're going to sue you. We're going to... I hung up. I had no patience for Melissa's empty threats. The sun was already rising when Madison finally fell asleep on the couch. I covered her with a blanket and went to my office. I turned on the computer and accessed the security cameras at the Westchester house. Yes, I had access to everything. Richard and Melissa were in front of the house, arguing with the security guards that Mr. Mitchell had placed there. My son was gesturing furiously, showing documents on his phone. Melissa was crying and screaming. It was a pathetic scene. At 8 in the morning, Mr. Mitchell called. Mrs. Wilson, your son is here in the office. He's demanding to see the documents. What should I do? Show him everything, counselor. Every paper, every contract. It's time for him to know the truth. I imagined the scene. Richard sitting in that meeting room seeing contract after contract, deed after deed, discovering that nothing, absolutely nothing was in his name. That the mother he considered a nuisance was, in fact, the architect of all his success. Madison woke up around 10. I prepared a hearty breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh orange juice. She ate in silence, processing everything she had discovered. Grandma, and now? What's going to happen? Now, my love, your father will have to make a choice. Either he accepts reality and changes how he treats me, or he loses everything. Are you going to take everything away from him? I didn't come into this world to be cruel, Madison, but I demand respect, recognition. I want to stop being the shadow and start existing for real in my family's life. The phone rang again. It was Mr. Mitchell. Mrs. Wilson, your son wants to speak with you. Should I put him on? Yes. Richard's voice was different. It no longer had its usual arrogance. It was broken, confused. Mom, I don't understand. How is this possible? All these years. The company, the house, everything. How did you do this? With a lot of hard work, son. A lot of study. Many sleepless nights. While you thought I was knitting, I was analyzing financial statements. While you were leaving me out of dinners, I was closing million-dollar deals. Why did you never tell me? Would you have believed me? Would you have accepted it? Or would you have felt humiliated for depending on your mother? His silence was answer enough. What do you want, Mom? What do I need to do? I want 3 things, Richard. First, respect. I never again want to be treated like a maid or someone who embarrasses you. Second, recognition. I want everyone to know who really built the Wilson Empire. Third, participation. I want to be part of your life, your business, your decisions. No more hiding me in the kitchen. And if I don't agree, then you can start from scratch, son, like I did 12 years ago. The difference is that I was 60 and you're 38. It should be easier for you. I heard Melissa shouting something in the background. Richard covered the phone, but I could still hear the argument. She was demanding that he put the old lady in her place, that he sue, that he call the police. When he came back to the phone, his voice was even more tired. Mom, I need time to think. You have until noon tomorrow. If you don't accept my conditions, I'll start the eviction process and shut down the company. Oh, and Richard. Yes. Madison is with me. She's safe and well taken care of. But I think you should consider the example you're setting for your daughter. I hung up the phone and looked at Madison, who had heard everything. Grandma, you think he'll accept? I don't know, my love. Your father has a lot of pride. And your mother, well, Melissa won't make things easy. Can I stay here with you today? Of course you can. In fact, I want to show you something. I took Madison to my office. I opened the safe and took out a thick envelope. This is for you. These are shares in one of my companies, in your name. They're worth approximately $2 million today. When you turn 21, they'll be yours." Madison's eyes widened. "Grandma, I can't accept this." "You can and you will. You're the only person in this family who always saw me as a human being. The only one who truly cared. This is my way of ensuring you have independence, whatever happens." She hugged me tightly and I felt her tears wet my blouse. "I love you, Grandma. I've always loved you. I always knew you were special." We spent the rest of the day together. I showed her my investment books, explained how the stock market worked, told stories about her grandfather, John. She absorbed everything with a thirst for knowledge that reminded me of myself when I started on this journey. In the evening, as we prepared dinner together, Madison asked a question that surprised me. "Grandma, if you could go back in time, would you do it all again?" I stopped chopping the tomatoes and looked at her. If I could go back in time, if I could choose between living in the shadows or showing who I really was from the beginning. Probably not, Madison, because if I had shown everything from the beginning, your father might never have developed confidence in himself. He might have settled. The mistake wasn't hiding, it was letting the secret become a prison for me. Dinner with Madison was the most peaceful I'd had in years. No veiled criticism, no looks of superiority, no feeling inadequate in my own presence. We talked about books, about music, about her plans for the future. I discovered that my granddaughter wanted to study film. "You know, Grandma, I have an idea. What if I made a documentary about you, about your story?" "A documentary about me?" "Yes, about how you built all this, about female empowerment after 60, about how women of your generation are underestimated. It could be my high school graduation project." The idea both scared and fascinated me. Expose my story to the world? Show who really was the woman behind the Wilson Empire? We'll see how things unfold, my love. It might be a good idea. It was almost 10 at night when the intercom rang. It was Richard. "Mom, can I come up? I need to talk to you. Alone." When I opened the door, I barely recognized my son. His eyes were red, his beard unshaven, his clothes the same from last night's. Dinner wrinkled. He seemed to have aged 10 years in 24 hours. "Come in, son. Would you like some coffee?" He sat on the couch, hands clasped, looking at the floor. Madison appeared at the bedroom door, but I signaled for her to wait. "Mom, I need to understand. How did all this start? Why did we never suspect?" I sat across from him and took a deep breath. It was time to tell the whole truth, without filters, without protections. "It started the day your father died, Richard. You were devastated, remember? You had just graduated, you were full of plans, but had no capital to start. The shop was bankrupt, debts were piling up. I had two options: use the small life insurance policy to survive modestly or risk everything to build something bigger. And you chose to risk. I chose you, son. I saw your potential, your talent, your ambition. But I also saw your fragility. You always had difficulty accepting help, especially from women. You inherited that from your father." Richard raised his eyes for the first time. My father was sexist? Not intentionally. But he grew up in a time when men had to be providers and women had to be caregivers. He loved me, but never saw me as an intellectual equal. You absorbed that. "I'm not sexist, Mom." "No? Then why were you ashamed of me at dinner? Why did you send me to the kitchen? Why do you think it's normal for your wife to suggest putting me in a nursing home?" His silence was eloquent. Let me continue the story. I took the 100,000 from the insurance, and instead of saving it, I started studying economics, finance, real estate market. I bought my first property at an auction for 30,000. I renovated it with my own hands and sold it for 80. With the profit, I bought 2. And so it went. Alone, without anyone's help. Completely alone. You know your friend, the broker, Tom. He's been working for me for 10 years. He never told you because I instruct all my employees to maintain confidentiality. Richard ran his hands over his face. My clients, the Mendonça Construction, the Pinheiros Group, they all came through you. All of them. I knew the owners, did business with them. I subtly suggested that I knew a talented young architect. They hired you to please me. So my success is a lie. No, son. Your talent is real. Your projects are brilliant. I just opened the doors. You walked through them on your own merit. Madison appeared with a tray of tea. She served all of us in silence and sat beside me. Dad, Grandma doesn't diminish your success. She just wants recognition for hers. Richard looked at his daughter, surprised by her maturity. Madison, your mother, is downstairs in the car waiting. She wants to go to a hotel. I'm staying here with Grandma. Madison. Dad, with all due respect, Mom spent the entire dinner last night bad-mouthing Grandma, called her a maid who doesn't know her place. I heard everything. I don't want to be near that. Richard's face contorted. For the first time, he seemed to understand the dimension of the problem. Mom, what Melissa said, I should have defended you. I'm sorry. Apologies are words, son. I need actions. What do you want me to do? I already told you. Respect, recognition, and participation. And one more thing. I want Madison to make the documentary. Documentary? Madison explained her idea. I saw the panic on Richard's face. Mom, this will expose our family. What will people think of me? And what do they think of me now, son? The inconvenient maid who disrupts your dinners. He lowered his head again. His phone rang. It was Melissa. He rejected the call. She's furious. She said if I give in to you, she'll file for divorce. And what have you decided? I don't know yet, Mom. It's a lot to process. Discovering that my entire life was an illusion? No, son, it was real. Just the origin of the money was different than you imagined. How will I explain this to people? My partners, my friends? With the truth that your mother is a successful investor who preferred to act behind the scenes. There's no shame in that. Madison took her father's hand. Dad, I'm proud of Grandma, and you should be too. Richard's cell phone rang again. This time he answered. Melissa, give me some time. No, I'm not coming up now. I'm talking to my mother. No, it's not a scam. Why not? Because I've seen the documents. It's all true. Don't yell at me. If you want to go to a hotel, go. I'm staying here. He hung up the phone and threw it on the couch. She's impossible. She wants me to sue you to contest the documents in court. She says you forged everything. The documents are all registered with the county clerk, son. The dates precede even your marriage. There's nothing to contest. We sat in silence for a few minutes. The wall clock was approaching midnight. Mom, if I accept your conditions, how would it work? Would you take control of everything? No. You would continue to manage the company, living in the house. But I want to participate in important decisions. I want to be consulted, and I want everyone to know my role in all this. And if Melissa doesn't accept, that decision is yours, son. But think, is she with you for who you are or for what you represent? Richard stood up, walked to the window, looked at the city below. You know, Mom, deep down, I always suspected something was strange. How does a newly graduated architect get such a generous anonymous investor? How did contracts always fall? Into my lap? But it was more comfortable not to question. And now I need to decide what's more important, my pride or my family. You have until noon tomorrow, son. He nodded, picked up his phone from the couch, kissed Madison, and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned to me. Mom, one question. If I had defended you yesterday, if I hadn't humiliated you, would none of this have happened? Probably not, son. I endured a lot over the years. But being called an embarrassment, being treated like a maid in front of your partners, it was too much. I'm really sorry, Mom, truly. I know, son. But feeling sorry isn't enough anymore. He left, and Madison came to hug me. Grandma, do you think he'll choose family? I don't know, my love, but whatever his choice, we'll be okay. You and I will be fine. We went to bed late that night. Lying in bed, looking at the ceiling, I thought about everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. The humiliating dinner, the decision to reveal everything, Richard's shock, Melissa's reaction. It was as if a dam had broken after years of containing the waters. In the morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. Madison had prepared breakfast. Good morning, Grandma. I made your coffee just the way you like it. You're an angel, Madison. As we had coffee, my phone chimed. It was a message from Melissa. You cunning old woman, you won't destroy my family. We'll prove this is all a scam. Prepare for war. I showed the message to Madison, who rolled her eyes. Mom's in denial, Grandma. She can't accept that she depended on you all this time. Your mother built her identity on your father's success. Discovering that this success has another origin threatens everything she represents. And what are you going to do? Nothing, my love. The truth needs no defense. The documents speak for themselves. It was 11:30 when the intercom rang. It was Richard again. Mom, can I come up? I've made my decision. When he entered, I noticed he was different. Clean-shaven, in fresh clothes, his eyes clearer. He seemed to have found some inner peace. I accept your conditions, Mom. All of them. My heart raced. And Melissa? Melissa is going to her parents' house in Greenwich. She said she needs time to think. She threatened divorce. And are you okay with that? No, I love my wife. But I realized that if she truly loves me, she'll understand. And if she doesn't understand, maybe our marriage isn't as solid as I thought. Madison jumped up and hugged her father. Dad, you made the right choice. I hope so, sweetheart. Now, Mom, what happens next? Now, son, we rebuild our relationship on honest foundations this time. And the documentary? Ah, yes. Madison will make the documentary, and you will participate. You'll tell your version of the story. We'll show the world that family success doesn't need to be based on lies. The following months were intense. Richard and I spent hours talking, really getting to know each other. He discovered a mother he didn't know, a cultured, intelligent, strategic woman. I discovered an insecure son who hid his fears behind a facade of arrogance. Melissa tried for divorce, as promised. But when her lawyers analyzed the documents and confirmed that nothing was in Richard's name, she backed off. She tried a reconciliation, but the damage was done. Richard realized that her love was conditional on his status. The divorce eventually happened 6 months later, but it was amicable. Richard conceded more than he should have in the settlement, using his own salary from the company to compensate Melissa. It was his way of atoning for years of complicity with her contempt for me. Madison immersed herself in the documentary project. She spent hours interviewing me, recording my accounts, filming my daily life. She discovered old documents, photos of the shop, records of the first investments. "Grandma, your story is amazing. It's about overcoming, about a woman who reinvented herself after 60. The most difficult moment was recording Richard's testimony. He cried several times, publicly apologized, acknowledged his mistakes. It was painful to watch, but necessary. Madison's documentary was first shown at her school's cultural fair. The auditorium was packed. Parents, students, teachers, all came to watch the film that was already generating buzz. The Invisible Empress: How My Grandmother Built an Empire in Silence. I sat in the front row between Richard and Madison. My son held my hand, squeezing it nervously as the lights dimmed. The first scene was me, sitting in my office surrounded by documents. My name is Margaret Wilson. I am 72 years old. And for 12 years I built a business empire that everyone believed belonged to my son. The documentary was powerful. Madison had talent. She managed to capture not just the facts but the emotion behind each decision. The interviews with my secret employees, who could finally speak openly. The testimonials from businessmen who revealed they had known my true role for years. And mainly, the journey of a woman who chose to live in it. The shadows out of love until the day that love was not reciprocated. The dinner scene was reconstructed with actors, based on Madison's accounts and security camera footage. I saw Richard sink into his chair when his actor version said, "Mom, get back to the kitchen now. You're embarrassing me." The strongest moment was when the documentary showed the contrast. On one side, me studying through the night, negotiating with bankers, analyzing investments. On the other, Richard receiving the accolades, the awards, the recognition. "I don't regret it," my voice narrated, as images of Richard celebrating successes flashed on the screen. A successful son was my greatest investment. My mistake was not realizing that by hiding, I was teaching him that I had no value. When it came to Richard's testimony part, I felt him tremble beside me. On the screen, he appeared with red eyes, his voice breaking. I spent my entire life believing a lie, not about the money, about my mother. I thought she was just a retired seamstress. In reality, she is one of the most brilliant investors I've ever met. And I treated her like a maid, like someone who embarrassed me. This is a weight I'll carry forever. The documentary ended with Madison and me on the balcony of my apartment, watching the sunset over New York. "Grandma, what would you say to women your age who feel invisible? That it's never too late to reinvent yourself, that knowledge has no age, and that our value doesn't depend on others' recognition. But there will come a day when that recognition will be necessary, if only for our own dignity." When the lights came on, the silence was broken by applause, first timid, then stronger, until it became an ovation. People stood up, looked at me with admiration. Older women came to hug me, saying my story inspired them. Madison's teacher came to the stage. Madison Wilson's work is not just a school documentary. It's an important historical record about female empowerment, about ageism, about the invisible women who support entire families. Therefore, we've nominated this work for the New York Student Film Festival. Madison jumped with joy. Richard hugged me, tears flowing freely down his face. "Mom, forgive me. Please forgive me." "I already have, son. The moment you chose to stay." In the months that followed, my life changed completely. The documentary went viral on social media after someone posted clips on YouTube. I was invited to give talks, interviews, podcasts. Women from all over America wrote to me, telling their own stories of invisibility. I created a foundation, the Margaret Wilson Institute for Senior Female Entrepreneurship. We began offering free financial education courses for women over 60. Richard became one of the main supporters, using his contacts to secure sponsorships. The relationship with my son was rebuilt day by day. He began to include me in all company decisions. In meetings, he always introduced me. "This is my mother, Margaret Wilson, founder of the Wilson Group." At first, people found it strange. Later, they came to respect me. Melissa tried to reconnect when she saw the success of the documentary and the positive repercussions. She sent messages saying she had been misinterpreted, that she had always respected me. I responded politely, but kept my distance. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. A year after that fateful dinner night, we organized a new gathering, this time at my house. The same table, the same guests, the company partners, now aware of the whole truth. I cooked myself, not out of obligation, but for pleasure. I prepared a special dinner, that secret recipe for cod that John loved so much. Richard helped serve, proud to work alongside me in the kitchen. During dinner, one of the partners asked me, "Mrs. Wilson, how did you manage to keep the secret for so long?" "A mother's love is like that," I replied. "We're capable of any sacrifice. But I learned that there are sacrifices we shouldn't make. Giving up our identity is one of them." Madison, now 17, and already accepted into one of the best films schools in the country, raised her glass. A toast to my grandmother, to the woman who taught me that success without integrity is disguised failure, and that it's never too late to rewrite our story. Everyone toasted. I looked around the table, my son looking at me with genuine respect, my granddaughter glowing with pride, the businessmen treating me as an equal. It was the same table where, a year before, I was humiliated. Now, I was celebrated. After dinner, as we had coffee in the living room, Richard stood up. "I need to make an announcement." After much thought and with my mother's approval, we decided to change the company name. Starting next month, Wilson Design will become Margaret Wilson Design Atelier. It's a tribute to the origins of everything, the tailoring shop where my mother began her journey. My eyes filled with tears. It was more than recognition. It was redemption. That night, after everyone left, I sat on the balcony with Madison. New York glittered below, alive and pulsing as always. "Grandma, are you happy now?" "I am, my love. Not because of the fame or recognition, but because I can finally be myself, because I no longer need to hide. And was it worth it? All the suffering?" I thought for a moment. The years of silence, of working in the shadows, of loneliness. The nights studying in secret, the days pretending to be just a retired seamstress. The pain of being ignored, underestimated, humiliated. You know, Madison, I've learned that there are many types of success. Financial success I achieved a long time ago. Success as a mother is debatable. I failed to teach important values to your father. But success as a human being, that I only achieved when I decided to stop hiding. And what comes next? Now I live, without masks, without secrets, without fear of being who I am. And you, my love, will tell many other stories like mine, because there are millions of invisible Margarets out there, waiting for someone to see them. The cold New York wind blew gently, and I wrapped my shawl tighter around me. Madison went to get tea for us. While she was in the kitchen, I took out my cell phone and opened the banking app. There it was, on the screen, the balance of all my accounts and investments. Numbers that represented not just money, but years of sacrifice, intelligence, and determination. But what made me smile weren't the values. It was the name that appeared as the account holder for everything, Margaret Wilson. No longer hidden behind offshore companies or holdings with generic names, it was my name, clearly and proudly displayed. Madison returned with the tea and noticed my smile. "What are you thinking about, Grandma?" "About how liberating it is to have no more secrets, my love. About how good it feels to finally exist, completely." We stayed there, grandmother and granddaughter watching the city fall asleep. In the apartment next door, soft music was playing. A couple was talking on the balcony. Life was following its normal course, except that now I was fully part of it. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Richard. "Mom, thank you for not giving up on me, for giving me a second chance. I love you." I replied, "I love you too, son. I always have. The difference is that now this love doesn't need to be invisible." Madison's documentary ended up winning not just the student festival, but was selected for international showcases. My story crossed borders, inspired women in other countries. I received invitations to speak at universities, at conferences, about female entrepreneurship, about ageism. But the greatest prize came on an ordinary morning months later. I was having coffee when Madison came running in with her laptop. "Grandma, Grandma, look at this." On the screen, an article from Forbes, the 10 most influential women in the American financial market. And there I was in 3rd place, with photo and all. "They tell your whole story, Grandma. They say you revolutionized the discussion about invisible women in the economy." I read the article calmly. It was surreal to see my journey there, documented, celebrated. At the end, a line caught my attention. Margaret Wilson proves that true power isn't in being seen, but in choosing when to reveal yourself. And so, what began as the worst night of my life, being kicked out of a dinner by my own son, transformed into the beginning of my true existence. I learned that love shouldn't make us invisible, that sacrifice has limits, and that it is never, ever too late to demand our place at the table. Today, at 73, I am CEO of the Wilson Group. My son is my creative director, a role reversal that worked perfectly. Madison is in her 2nd year of film school, preparing her first feature film, a fiction based on real stories of women who built empires in silence. And every Thursday, without fail, we have dinner together. Me, Richard, Madison, and whoever else wants to join us. Always at the dining room table, never in the kitchen, because that's my place, at the center of my own story, visible and respected as it should have always been. If this story touched you in any way, share it, because somewhere, right now, there's a Margaret being sent to the kitchen, and she needs to know she has the right to say no, that she has the right to exist, that she has the right to sit at the table. Thank you for reading to the end. End of story.